When the moving truck pulled up to the small-town high school, the sky was bright and the air smelled of cut grass and new beginnings. The girl in the front seat, her hair pulled into a neat ponytail, looked out the window with quiet curiosity. Her name was Tiana. 16 years old, full of energy but also full of nerves. She had moved so many times before. New schools, new faces, new rules. But this time she hoped it would be different. Her father had promised this would be their last move for a long time. He said this town was peaceful, safe, and full of good people. Tiana wanted to believe that. Her father, David, wasn't the kind of man who talked much about himself. He was calm, serious, and had that quiet strength that made people listen when he spoke. He had served in the Navy for years, a SEAL, though hardly anyone in town knew that. To most people, he was just Mr. Carter, the new guy at the local security company. Tiana admired her father more than anyone, even if she didn't always understand his rules. He believed in discipline, respect, and courage, not just the kind used in battle, but the kind used in everyday life. "Remember what I told you, Ty?" he said as she reached for her backpack that first morning. "Yeah, I know," she smiled softly. "Keep my head high, don't let fear run the show." He nodded once. Exactly. The first day at Jefferson High started like any other. The hallways buzzed with chatter, the smell of floor polish mixed with perfume, and lockers slammed like thunderclaps. Tiana walked in with confidence, but inside she could feel her stomach twist. Everyone seemed to already have a group, a rhythm, and she was just a new note trying to fit into the song. By lunch, she sat alone. Not because she wanted to, but because it was easier. She scrolled through her phone, pretending to be busy, when a flyer on the wall caught her attention. Cheerleading tryouts. Friday. Her eyes lit up. Back in her old school, cheer was her world. The stunts, the teamwork, the energy of the crowd. It made her feel alive. Maybe this was her way in. She spent the next few days after school practicing in the backyard. Her dad would sometimes watch from the porch, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You really miss it, huh?" he asked one evening. "I do," she said, catching her breath. "It's the one place I feel like I belong." Then show them what you can do. By Friday, she was ready. The gym was loud, full of laughter and chatter. The cheer team was already gathered, mostly familiar faces, all in matching practice gear. The captain, a tall blonde girl named Megan, watched as Tiana walked in. "Hi, I'm Tiana," she said politely. "I'm new here." Megan smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome. We'll see what you've got." The tryouts were tough, jumps, routines, chants, but Tiana gave it everything she had. Her movements were sharp, her smile genuine, her energy unstoppable. Even a few of the girls whispered in surprise at how good she was. By the end, Megan forced a polite clap. "Thanks for coming," she said coolly. "We'll post results on Monday." All weekend, Tiana couldn't stop thinking about it. She knew she did well. Still, she'd been in enough schools to know talent didn't always equal acceptance. On Monday morning, she rushed to the gym doors before first period. The list was taped to the wall. Her eyes scanned it quickly. There it was, and her name. She couldn't help but smile. For the first time since moving, she felt hope. That afternoon, she showed her dad the paper. "I made it," she said, holding it up. He looked up from his coffee and grinned. "Did I ever doubt you?" She laughed. Maybe just a little. Practice started the next day. The other girls weren't exactly welcoming, but they weren't openly mean either. Megan gave short instructions and rarely made eye contact. Some of the other girls giggled when Tiana spoke, whispering behind hands. At first, Tiana brushed it off. She told herself it was just the new girl thing. She worked harder than anyone else, staying late to perfect routines, helping others when they missed a move. Slowly, she thought she was earning their respect. But one afternoon after practice, as she packed her things, she overheard two girls talking by the bleachers. "She's way too confident for a new girl," one whispered. "Yeah," the other replied. "Megan said she's trying too hard to impress everyone. Thinks she's better than us." Tiana froze. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe she misheard, but deep down she knew this feeling. The quiet rejection, the invisible wall people built when they didn't want you around. When she got home that night, her father noticed right away. "Long day?" he asked. She shrugged. "Just getting used to things." He studied her face. "You don't have to tell me everything, Ty. But don't let anyone decide who you are, ever. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Over the next few weeks, the small things started to add up. Her locker would be accidentally left open. Her pom-poms would go missing before practice. A few times her sneakers were moved, and once, someone left a sticky note on her locker that said, "Not everyone fits the uniform." It stung, not just the words, but the way no one stood up for her. Even the few girls who were nice to her looked away when Megan or her friends made comments. Still, Tiana kept showing up. She smiled, practiced harder, and told herself that proving them wrong was the best revenge. Outside of school, her father was her anchor. Every evening they ate dinner together. No phones, no TV, just conversation. He'd ask about practice, about her classes, about her day. He didn't push, but he always listened. One night she finally asked him something she'd been wondering. "Dad, were you ever scared?" He looked up from his plate. "Scared? Yeah, you've done all these brave things. I can't even stand up to a few mean girls." He smiled gently. "Bravery isn't about what you face. It's about how you face it. I've been scared plenty of times. But fear doesn't get the final say. You do." Those words stayed with her. The next morning, she walked into school a little taller. When someone whispered, she smiled instead of shrinking. When Megan ignored her during drills, she kept going. Slowly, a few of the other girls started talking to her. Not much, but enough to remind her she wasn't invisible. Then came homecoming week, one of the biggest events of the year. The cheer squad had to perform at the pep rally. It was Tiana's first big performance with them. She practiced every night, determined not to mess up. On the day of the rally, the gym was packed. Students cheered, the band played, and the cheerleaders lined up in formation. The energy was electric, but right before they went on, Tiana noticed something strange. Her shoelaces had been cut halfway through. Her heart dropped. She quickly tied them tighter, hoping they'd hold. The music started. The crowd roared. Everything moved fast, jumps, chants, spins. For a moment, it was perfect. Then as she leaped into the air for the final move, her lace snapped. She stumbled hard but caught herself before falling. The crowd gasped. Megan's eyes flashed, but she kept smiling for the audience. When it was over, the team walked off the court. No one said a word to Tiana. She sat in the corner trying not to cry. Later that night at home, her father found her sitting on the porch. "Something happen?" he asked quietly. Her throat tightened. "They don't want me there." He sat beside her, letting the silence stretch. Then he said, "You know, in my line of work, people didn't always want me around either. Sometimes it had nothing to do with me, just fear of what they didn't understand. You can't control that, T. All you can do is stay true to who you are." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "It just hurts." "I know," he said softly. "But remember, diamonds only form under pressure." The next day, she went back to practice. She didn't talk much, but she didn't hide either. She focused on the moves, her timing, her energy. Little by little, her determination started to show. Even a few of the girls who used to whisper began to admire her focus. By the end of that month, Tiana was no longer the quiet new girl. She wasn't fully accepted yet, but she had something better: self-respect. She knew who she was, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. She didn't know it yet, but her strength was about to be tested in ways far greater than a cheer routine. And soon, everyone at Jefferson High would find out that behind the quiet girl with the bright smile stood a man who had faced real battles. A father who had trained his daughter not just to survive, but to stand tall no matter what. And that, as they say, was only the beginning. Tiana woke up the next morning feeling a little stronger than before. The sting of what happened at the pep rally was still there, but something inside her had shifted. She decided she wasn't going to let it break her. Not this time. She'd worked too hard and come too far to let a few people steal her spirit. Her father had already left for work when she came down for breakfast. A note was on the counter, written in his neat handwriting. It said, "Remember who you are, not what they say you are." She smiled at that. He always knew how to say the right thing, even when he wasn't there. At school, things felt a little colder. Word had spread about her stumble at the rally, and some students had turned it into a joke. She heard the whispers in the hallways. A few people even mimicked her fall behind her back. Laughing quietly, she kept her head high and walked on. When she reached her locker, someone had drawn a small smiley face with tape and written the words "Don't trip again" next to it. She took a deep breath, tore it off, and threw it away without a word. Inside, her heart ached. But she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. Practice that afternoon started like usual. The gym smelled of sweat, perfume, and determination. The sound of sneakers squeaking against the floor echoed as the team warmed up. Megan, the captain, clapped her hands loudly. "Okay, everyone, let's start from the top." Tiana took her position quietly. She focused on the beat, the rhythm, the moves she had practiced again and again. She knew this routine better than anyone. Halfway through, one of the girls accidentally bumped into her during a spin. Tiana lost her balance for a second but caught herself before falling. Megan frowned. "Watch your spacing, Tiana," she said sharply, even though it wasn't Tiana's fault. "I'm sorry," Tiana said softly. The girl who bumped her smirked. "Maybe you just need more practice." A few others giggled. Tiana looked down, hiding her frustration. She wanted to say something to defend herself, but she remembered her father's words about staying calm and choosing dignity over anger. After practice, she stayed behind to rehearse alone. The sun was setting, and the light coming through the gym windows turned everything golden. She practiced until her legs felt heavy and her arms ached. As she packed up her things, she heard a voice. "You work harder than anyone here," said Lena, a soft-spoken girl from the squad. She had dark curls and kind eyes. "I don't get why they treat you like that," Tiana shrugged. "Maybe I make them uncomfortable." "That's their problem, not yours," Lena said. "You're really good, Tiana. Don't let them make you forget that." It was a small thing, but it meant the world. That night when she got home, her father was in the backyard doing pull-ups on a metal bar he had built himself. She sat on the steps watching him silently. "You look like you've been thinking," he said without turning around. "I guess," she replied. "It's just, no matter how hard I try, they always find a way to make me feel like I don't belong." He finished his set, wiped his hands, and sat next to her. "You know what I've learned?" he said quietly. "People usually treat others based on their own fears, not your worth. Sometimes they see something in you that reminds them of what they lack." She listened closely. "So what do I do?" He smiled. "You keep showing up. You keep being excellent. That's how you change minds, not by shouting, but by shining." She thought about those words for a long time. The next few days were tough, but she noticed something new. When she stopped reacting to the mean looks and quiet laughs, some of the girls lost interest. They didn't get the reaction they wanted. Still, Megan wasn't done. She had a way of making her authority felt in small, cutting ways. She'd give Tiana the harder stunts, make her redo moves that everyone else passed on the first try, or ignore her suggestions. Tiana took it all quietly. Every correction, every test, she treated them like training. Each challenge made her stronger. Then one afternoon, Coach announced that the school had been invited to perform at a regional showcase, a big opportunity. The routine had to be perfect and the pressure was on. Megan gathered the team. "This is a huge deal for us. Only the best will perform, so if anyone can't keep up, they might have to sit this one out." Everyone nodded. Tiana felt her stomach tighten. Practice that week was intense. The girls trained until late every evening. Tiana made sure she was early and stayed late, perfecting every step. On Thursday, the coach asked Megan to assign stunt groups. Megan put Tiana in a difficult position, as a flyer with two new bases who hadn't worked together before. It was the most unstable combination on the team. Tiana didn't complain. She practiced harder, trusting her teammates even when they wobbled. But one day, during a lift, something went wrong. The bases lost grip and Tiana fell backward. She hit the mat hard, gasping for breath. Everyone froze. "Are you okay?" Lena rushed over. Tiana nodded, trying to smile. "I'm fine." Coach came over, concerned. "Let's take 5, girls." As Tiana sat on the sidelines, Megan whispered to another girl, loud enough for Tiana to hear. "Maybe this is too hard for her. We can't afford mistakes at the showcase." The words burned, but Tiana said nothing. She got up, dusted herself off, and went right back to practice. By the end of the day, she could barely move, but she nailed the routine. Even Coach looked impressed. "Nice recovery," Coach said. "That's the kind of resilience we need." A few girls clapped. Megan didn't. She just gave a tight smile and turned away. At home, Tiana's father noticed her limp. "You hurt?" he asked. Just sore, she said, trying to sound casual. He didn't press. Instead, he brought out a bag of ice and handed it to her. You're pushing yourself hard. Just remember to rest too, she smiled. You sound like my coach, he chuckled. Your coach wants medals. I just want you safe. That night, as she sat with the ice pack, she thought about how different her father was from everyone else. He never raised his voice. He never told her she couldn't do something. He just believed, quietly, steadily, that she could handle anything. The showcase day finally arrived. The gym was filled with teams from all over the state. The air buzzed with excitement. The Jefferson High team gathered backstage, stretching and fixing their uniforms. Megan gave her usual speech, all confidence and pride. Tiana stood quietly at the back, hands shaking just a little. When their turn came, they lined up. The music started. The crowd clapped along. This time everything clicked. The moves flowed, the jumps were sharp, the timing perfect. When Tiana took her position for the final lift, the one that had scared her the most, she took a deep breath and let go of the fear. She flew into the air, light and strong. The bases caught her perfectly. When the music ended, the crowd erupted in cheers. The girls hugged each other, smiling and laughing. Even Megan had to admit it. They had nailed it. Afterward, as everyone celebrated, Megan walked over to Tiana. Good job today, she said, her tone neutral. Tiana smiled. Thanks. For a moment, Megan seemed like she wanted to say more, but then she turned and walked away. That night, when Tiana got home, her father was waiting. How was it? He asked. She grinned. We nailed it. He smiled proudly. I knew you would. She showed him a video of the performance on her phone. He watched quietly, eyes filled with pride. When the video ended, he said softly, You're stronger than you think. Maybe, she said, but I still wish people would see me for who I am. They will, he replied. Eventually. The truth always finds its way through. For a few days, things seemed to get better. The team treated her with a bit more respect. Even Megan didn't have much to say, but peace never lasts long when jealousy is involved. A week later, Tiana was scrolling through her phone when she noticed something strange. On social media, someone had posted a picture of her from the showcase, but it had been edited to make her look awkward mid-jump, with a caption that read, Flying high. Until she doesn't, the comments were cruel. Laughing emojis, snide remarks. Her heart sank. She felt that familiar knot of pain tighten in her chest. She didn't know who posted it, but she had a good guess. She locked her phone, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. When her father came home that evening, she didn't say a word about it. She just helped him set the table and smiled through dinner. But later that night, she couldn't sleep. She went outside and sat on the porch steps, staring at the quiet street. Her father came out after a while, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He handed her one. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. Not really, she whispered. He sat beside her. You know, when I was overseas, there were days when everything felt like it was falling apart. People doubted me, situations went wrong, and sometimes I wanted to give up. But then I'd remember why I started, why I was there. Purpose keeps you standing when the world tries to knock you down. She looked at him. What's my purpose, Dad? He smiled softly. To be yourself, fully, proudly, and without apology. That's your mission. She nodded slowly. Even if it hurts? Especially when it hurts, he said. That's when it matters most. That night, as she went back inside, something in her shifted again. The pain didn't disappear, but it turned into something else. Drive. She promised herself she would keep showing up. Keep being excellent. Keep shining, even if others tried to dim her light. And though she didn't know it yet, that decision, to keep going no matter what, was about to change everything. Because sometimes, the quiet ones carry the loudest strength. And sometimes the world only realizes it when it's too late. And for Tiana, the storm that was coming would show everyone exactly who she was, and who her father really was. The days after the edited photo went online were hard for Tiana. Every time she opened her phone, she saw it shared again, different captions, more comments. Some were mean, some were just teasing, but they all had one thing in common. They made her feel small. At school, people whispered as she walked by. The cheer squad avoided meeting her eyes. Only Lena still sat beside her at lunch, trying to make her smile. You know they're just jealous, Lena said one afternoon. They can't stand that you're better than them. Tiana smiled weakly. It doesn't feel that way, Lena sighed. You can't let them win. They'll get bored eventually. Tiana nodded, but deep down she wasn't sure. The whispers were getting louder, not quieter. Her father noticed the change in her again. She was quieter at dinner, her phone face down on the table, her eyes tired. You okay? He asked gently. I'm fine, she said, forcing a smile. He looked at her for a long moment. You know, you don't have to carry everything alone. She wanted to tell him everything. The picture, the teasing, the looks in the hallway, but she didn't. She didn't want him to worry. He'd been through so much already. Instead, she just said, It's just school stuff. I'll handle it. He nodded slowly, knowing she wasn't telling him everything. But he also knew pushing wouldn't help. She had to come to him when she was ready. That weekend, she didn't leave her room much. She tried reading, watching videos, anything to distract herself. But the thought of going back to school made her stomach twist. On Sunday evening, her father knocked on her door. Come outside for a bit, he said. She followed him to the backyard. The air was cool and the stars were starting to show. He pointed to the training area he had set up. Pull-up bar, ropes, and a few wooden boxes. Remember when you were little and you used to race me to the fence? He asked. She smiled faintly. You always let me win, he chuckled. Not always. Then his tone softened. You're strong, Tiana. But strength isn't just about muscles or endurance. It's about standing tall when the world tries to bend you. Want to train a bit? She hesitated, then nodded. He started with simple drills, balance, focus, breathing. Between exercises, he talked to her. Not like a soldier, but like a father who'd seen too many battles. Both inside and out. Out there, he said, nodding toward the dark horizon. I met people who tried to tear others down just to feel powerful. But I also met people who rose above it. The difference wasn't skill or size. It was heart. She listened quietly. The rhythm of the workout and the calm in his voice started to settle something inside her. By the end, her heart was racing, but she felt lighter. Better? He asked. She smiled. Yeah, a little, he nodded. Good, just remember, they can't take what's inside you unless you hand it over. That night, she slept a little easier. The next day at school, she held her head higher. When people whispered, she ignored them. When they laughed, she walked right past. It didn't stop everything, but it started to change the energy. Some people lost interest. Some even seemed a little guilty. Still, the cheer team wasn't the same. Megan barely spoke to her except to give instructions. But the coach noticed. Tiana, coach said after practice one day, you've been working hard. Don't let anyone shake that. I'm proud of the progress you've made. It was a small comment, but it meant everything. Later that week, the team was told they'd be performing at a local competition, one that could qualify them for nationals. It was the biggest event of the year. Everyone was excited, and for the first time in weeks, Tiana felt hopeful again. The team practiced for hours every day. Coach had chosen a complicated routine, full of stunts and formations that required trust and timing. One afternoon, after a long practice, Megan called the team together. We need everyone at their best, she said. No mistakes. That means extra hours, especially for those who've been struggling. Her eyes flicked to Tiana. Tiana bit her lip but nodded. I'll be there, and she was every day, early and late. Even when the others went home, she stayed behind to run drills. Lena often stayed with her, helping her count beats or film her moves so she could improve. You know, Lena said one night, I think they're finally seeing how good you are. Tiana smiled. Maybe. I just want to do my best. A few days before the competition, the coach paired up the girls for a key stunt. Megan had planned to do the final lift herself, but coach changed it. Tiana, you'll take the lead this time, she said. You've got the strength and form for it. The room went quiet. Megan froze. Wait, you want her to be the lead? Coach nodded. Yes, she's earned it. Megan's smile was tight. If that's what you think is best. Tiana felt a wave of pride, but also unease. She could tell Megan didn't like the decision. That night, Tiana practiced harder than ever. She wanted everything perfect. The next day, during the final rehearsal, something strange happened. Right before their big lift, Megan handed Tiana a new ribbon for her uniform. Thought you might want to match the rest of us, she said sweetly. Tiana hesitated but smiled. Thanks. She tied it into her ponytail and went out to perform. Halfway through the routine, as she spun into the air, she felt her hair yank sharply. The ribbon had come loose, wrapping around her fingers. She lost focus for just a second, and that was enough. Her balance slipped and she tumbled forward. The bases tried to catch her, but it was too fast. She hit the mat hard, pain shooting through her wrist. The music stopped, everyone froze. Coach ran over immediately. "Tiana, are you okay?" Tiana sat up slowly, holding her wrist. "I think so. It just hurts." Coach helped her up. "Let's get you checked out." Megan stood nearby, pretending to look concerned. "That's awful. What happened?" "I'm not sure," Tiana said quietly, untangling the ribbon from her fingers. Lena frowned. "That ribbon?" She started, but stopped when Megan shot her a sharp look. The nurse confirmed it wasn't broken, just sprained. Still, Tiana was told to rest her hand for a week. Coach said she could still perform, but only if she felt ready. That night, when she got home, her father was already waiting. He had seen the call from the school. "What happened?" he asked, calm but serious. She told him everything, the routine, the fall, the ribbon. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said quietly, "You think it was an accident?" She hesitated. "I don't know." He nodded slowly. "Maybe, maybe not. But either way, you can't let it stop you." "I don't want to quit," she said. "I just don't want to keep getting hurt." He leaned forward. "You won't, because now you know what you're dealing with. Stay smart. Stay focused. You control what happens next." She nodded. The next few days, she trained carefully, wrapping her wrist and working on her form. She was determined not to let anyone push her out. By the time the competition arrived, she was ready. The arena was buzzing with noise and excitement. Teams from all over the region filled the stands, and bright lights lit up the floor. As the Jefferson team gathered backstage, Tiana could feel her heart pounding. "Ready?" Lena whispered. "Ready," Tiana said. The music started. They moved in sync, every motion sharp and clean. Tiana's wrist ached, but she ignored the pain. When the time came for the final stunt, she looked at her bases, nodded, and leapt into the air. For a split second, everything seemed to slow down. The lights, the music, the faces in the crowd. Then they caught her perfectly. The crowd cheered. When the routine ended, the girls hugged, breathless and proud. Even Megan smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Coach was thrilled. "That was incredible, girls. You nailed it." The team celebrated, laughing and crying in relief. Later, as they walked off the stage, Megan approached Tiana. "You did good," she said softly. "Really good," Tiana smiled. "Thanks." For a moment, it almost felt real, like peace was possible. But when she got home that night, she found something waiting on her doorstep, an envelope with no name. Inside was a printout of the photo that had been posted online weeks ago. Only this time, someone had written across it in bold red marker, "You'll never belong here." Tiana's heart sank. She stood there, staring at the message, her hands trembling. Her father came to the door a few moments later. He saw the paper, took it from her hand, and looked at it silently. "Who gave you this?" he asked, his voice low and calm. "I don't know," she whispered. He folded the paper carefully. "You're not walking to school alone anymore," he said quietly. "From now on, I'll drive you." She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. He put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let fear take space in your heart. We'll handle this the right way." That night, she couldn't sleep again. The words on the paper replayed in her mind over and over. But under the fear, there was something else, determination. If they thought this would make her quit, they didn't know her at all. She'd learned something from her father, how to stand tall in the storm. She didn't know it yet, but that single act, leaving that cruel note, would set off a chain of events that would reveal everything, the truth about who her father really was, the truth about the people who wanted to see her fail, and the truth about what real strength looks like, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest power, and soon everyone at Jefferson High would see that the girl they tried to break was raised by a man who never knew how to quit. And that lesson was one they would never forget. Tiana didn't tell anyone at school about the note. Only her father and Lena knew. She tried to act like everything was normal, but her mind kept going back to those words. "You'll never belong here." Every time she walked through the halls, she wondered who had left it. Was it someone from the team? Someone from class? Or maybe one of the students who laughed at her behind her back? Her father drove her to school every day just like he promised. He didn't say much on those drives, but his presence was enough. There was something comforting in the way he sat tall behind the wheel, calm and steady like nothing could shake him. One morning, as they sat at a red light, he said quietly, "You know, when I was in training, we learned that the mind gives up before the body ever does. It's the same in life. The trick isn't avoiding the pain, it's learning how to move through it." Tiana looked out the window and nodded slowly. "I think I'm starting to understand that." Her father gave her a small smile. "Good, because the world doesn't get easier, but you get stronger." When she got to school that day, the first thing she noticed was the board in the hallway, the one that listed the top performers in extracurricular activities. Her name was finally there, listed under the cheer team for outstanding performance in regional competition. She stopped for a moment, staring at it. A few students passed by, glancing at her, whispering. But this time, their looks were different, curious, maybe even impressed. Lena ran up beside her. "You saw it," she said excitedly. "You're officially school famous now." Tiana laughed softly. "Guess so. But not everyone was happy about it." Across the hall, Megan and two of her friends stood watching. "She's acting like she's queen of the team," one of them muttered. Megan crossed her arms. "She's not going to outshine me. Not after everything I've done for this team." Her friend hesitated. "What if Coach keeps giving her the spotlight?" "Then we'll make sure she can't handle it," Megan said quietly. "People only like her because she's new. Give it time." Later that week, the cheer team started preparing for nationals. Coach was strict, pushing everyone to their limit. The routine was tougher, faster, and riskier than anything they'd done before. Tiana was still recovering from her wrist injury, but she refused to step back. She wanted to prove she could keep up, not just for the team, but for herself. During breaks, she stretched, practiced her form, and helped the younger girls fix their steps. Slowly, even the ones who used to ignore her started asking for her help. "You're really good at explaining stuff," one of them said shyly. Tiana smiled. "You just have to feel the rhythm, not fight it." Coach noticed the shift too. "Tiana, your leadership is showing," she said one afternoon. "You've got the makings of a captain someday." Tiana's eyes widened. "Really?" Coach nodded. "Keep working hard. You've got something special." When Megan overheard that, her face tightened. She forced a smile, but inside anger burned. That night, she messaged her friends in the team group chat. "We need to remind her who's been running this team since day one." The messages went back and forth. Jokes, half-serious comments, things meant to look harmless. But word spread fast. Soon a rumor started circulating that Tiana only got special attention because her dad pulled strings. Tiana heard it in the locker room a few days later. Two girls were whispering near the mirrors. "They say her dad's some kind of officer or something," one said. "Maybe that's why Coach favors her." The other shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. People like that always get help." Tiana froze. Her reflection in the mirror looked calm, but inside her chest tightened. Lena came in just then, saw her face, and frowned. "You heard them, didn't you?" Tiana nodded slowly. "I don't get it." "Why can't they just let me be?" Lena sighed. "Because you're good, T. You're better than they expected." "That scares people." Tiana didn't say anything. She just tied her shoes tighter, stood up, and walked out. That evening, when she got home, her father was in the kitchen making dinner. He noticed her quiet expression immediately. "Long day?" he asked. "Just people talking again," she said, setting her bag down. He stirred the pot and said softly, "You can't stop people from talking, but you can control what you listen to." "I know," she said, sitting down. "It's just hard. They don't even know me." He looked at her for a moment, then said, "You remember what I told you when you started cheerleading?" She thought back. "That I should give it everything I've got," he smiled. "Exactly. You don't owe anyone an explanation for being good at something. You just keep showing up and the truth will speak for itself." His calm confidence gave her strength. The next day, she walked into school like nothing could touch her. She smiled at people, helped a teacher carry boxes, and even complimented a girl who used to roll her eyes at her. Slowly, things began to shift again. Some of the girls who used to ignore her started warming up, but Megan wasn't done. A week before nationals, Coach called a meeting. "We'll be holding our final team review on Friday," she said. "I'll be selecting who performs which parts of the routine." The moment Coach left the room, Megan leaned close to her friends. "Friday's our chance. If she messes up even once, Coach won't trust her for nationals." "What are you going to do?" one of them asked. Megan smiled faintly. "Nothing she won't do to herself." That week, Megan acted extra kind. She complimented Tiana's jumps, shared water with her, even offered to help her practice. It felt strange. But Tiana wanted to believe maybe things were changing. On Thursday, Megan suggested they all practice together after school. "We'll go over the final lift," she said, "just to make sure it's perfect." Tiana agreed. They met in the gym when everyone else had gone home. The lights were dim and music echoed softly from someone's phone. "Okay," Megan said. "Let's start from the second verse. Tiana, you go up on my count." Tiana took her position. The first few runs went well. Everyone was focused, the timing perfect. Then during the last lift, something went wrong. As Megan counted, she gave a sudden signal that wasn't part of the routine. The base girls hesitated for a second, confused, and Tiana, trusting the call, jumped early. She stumbled mid-air, barely catching herself. Her heart pounded as she landed awkwardly on one knee. "What happened?" one of the girls asked, startled. Megan shrugged. "Guess someone forgot the rhythm." Tiana frowned. "You gave the signal too early." "Did I?" Megan said innocently. "Maybe you just misheard." Tiana's stomach twisted. She wanted to argue but stopped herself. She could feel her father's voice in her mind. "Stay calm, stay focused." She took a deep breath and said, "Let's just run it again." They did. And this time she didn't wait for Megan's cue. She trusted her own count. It went perfectly. When they finished, Megan's fake smile faltered for the first time. "Good job," she said through tight lips. Tiana nodded. "Thanks, I'll see you tomorrow." That night, when she got home, her father was cleaning his gear in the garage. She leaned against the doorframe and said, "You ever feel like people want to see you fail just because they can?" He looked up and smiled faintly. "All the time. How do you deal with it?" she asked. He put down the rag, stood, and said, "You stay focused on what you came to do. You don't waste energy proving your worth to people who already made up their minds." She nodded, thinking about the words long after he went inside. The next day, the day of the final review, she woke up early. The morning light spilled into her room and she felt ready. At school, the gym was full of energy. Coach sat with a clipboard while each group performed. When it was their turn, Tiana's heart raced, but she smiled anyway. The music started and everything clicked. The movements flowed, the lifts were strong, and her jumps hit perfect height. When the routine ended, the team clapped, even Coach. "That's what I like to see," Coach said proudly. Everyone was sharp. "Especially you, Tiana. Your confidence has grown so much." Tiana grinned, relief flooding her chest. But in the corner, Megan's face darkened. When Coach announced that Tiana would lead the center group for nationals, a few of the girls clapped, but Megan didn't. She just stood there, her jaw tight. After practice, Megan pulled her bag from the locker and walked out without saying a word. Tiana watched her go, unsure what to feel, pity maybe, or sadness. Lena came up beside her. "Don't let her get to you. You earned this." Tiana nodded. "I know. I just wish it didn't have to be like this." As they walked to the parking lot, they didn't notice someone standing behind the gym door, watching them leave. That night, the sky was quiet. Tiana sat on the porch while her father cleaned up after dinner. "You've got that look again," he said, stepping outside. She smiled faintly, just thinking about tomorrow. "Nationals feel so big." He sat beside her. "You'll do great. You've worked hard for it." "Yeah," she said softly. "It's just, I don't want people to think I only got here because of you." He looked at her seriously. "Then don't tell them who I am. Let your work speak for you." She nodded. "That's what I want," he smiled. "Good, because whether they know or not doesn't change who you are." The next day, when they arrived at the competition venue, the team gathered in the dressing area. Everyone was buzzing with nerves and excitement. Coach gave a short speech, reminding them to stay focused, to trust each other, and to have fun. As they lined up for their turn, Megan stood behind Tiana, quiet. She hadn't said a word all morning. When the announcer called their school name, the team took the floor. The lights were blinding, the crowd roaring. The music started. Every move was perfect, unsharp, clean, and full of energy. Tiana felt like she was flying. All the long nights, all the whispers, all the doubt, it melted away. And when they hit the final pose, the crowd erupted. Coach was in tears. The girls hugged each other, screaming in joy. Tiana turned, looking for Megan, but she wasn't celebrating. She was standing still, staring at something behind the judges' table. Tiana followed her gaze and froze. There, in the front row, stood her father, calm, proud. His arms crossed. He hadn't planned to come. But he was there, wearing his Navy uniform. The whole crowd noticed him. A few whispers spread, people pointing, recognizing the insignia. Megan's expression shifted from shock to realization. She understood now. The man she'd tried to embarrass Tiana in front of, the man whose daughter she'd bullied, was a decorated Navy SEAL. And as the crowd cheered louder, Megan looked down speechless. Tiana, meanwhile, just smiled. Not out of pride, but out of peace. Because for the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel like she had to hide. She had earned her place, not because of her father, but because she had learned to fight with grace. The cheers from the crowd were still echoing when the music faded. The Jefferson cheer squad stood frozen for a moment, trying to catch their breath, realizing what had just happened. They had nailed every move. Not one mistake. Tiana's chest rose and fell as she looked around at her teammates. Some were crying from relief, others hugging each other tightly, and then she saw him, her father, standing near the front row of the audience, his calm, proud smile cutting through the noise. For a second, her eyes stung. She blinked hard, trying not to cry in front of everyone. She'd told him not to come because she didn't want to feel extra pressure. But now that he was here, she couldn't imagine a better moment for him to see. Coach blew the whistle and shouted, "That's what champions look like." The team burst into laughter and cheers again, the tension melting away. Even Megan smiled, though her eyes stayed on Tiana's father longer than anyone else's. When the judges announced the results an hour later, Jefferson High took second place, their best ranking in years. The crowd roared as the team lifted their trophy high, gold ribbons shining under the bright arena lights. But what everyone would remember most from that day wasn't the trophy. It was the look of pride on Tiana's face, the quiet confidence that came from knowing she had overcome something much bigger than a competition. After the ceremony, her father waited by the doors. When she spotted him, she ran up and threw her arms around him. "You came," she said, her voice muffled against his uniform. He hugged her back, steady and strong. "Wouldn't have missed it for the world." She looked up at him. "You didn't tell me you were wearing your uniform?" He chuckled. "Didn't plan to. Got called in for a meeting this morning, came straight here after. Guess it worked out." She laughed softly. "Yeah, people noticed." He smiled. "Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before doubting my daughter." She shook her head, smiling. "I didn't want them to see you like that. I wanted them to see me." He nodded slowly. "They did. That's what matters." The coach came over then, shaking his hand. "You must be the proud dad I've heard so much about," she said warmly. "Proud doesn't even begin to cover it," he replied. The rest of the team gathered around, taking pictures and chatting excitedly. Even Megan approached them, her expression softer than usual. "You did great today," she said quietly to Tiana. "You deserved the spotlight." Tiana hesitated, unsure how to respond, then smiled. "Thanks. We all did great." Megan nodded and walked away, her face thoughtful. That evening, the team went out for a small celebration at a local diner. They laughed, shared fries, and replayed their favorite moments from the competition. For the first time, there wasn't any tension. No whispers, no jealousy, no quiet stares. Everyone was just a team. When Tiana got home that night, she went straight to the backyard. The stars were bright and the air was cool. Her father joined her after a few minutes, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. He handed one to her and sat down. "Remember when you first told me you wanted to join the cheer team?" he asked. She smiled. "You thought it was a phase," he laughed. "I did. I thought you'd try it for a few weeks and move on. But you proved me wrong." She sipped her drink, then said quietly, "There were times I wanted to quit. Really quit. But you always told me not to let fear win." He looked at her proudly. "And you didn't. That's what makes me proud. Not the trophies. Not the cheers. The fact that you kept going when things got hard. She leaned back against the porch rail. It's strange. I used to think strength meant fighting back, but now I think it's more about staying kind even when people aren't. He nodded slowly. You just described real strength. The next week at school, things felt different. People greeted Tiana in the halls. Some apologized for believing the rumors. Others simply smiled and said congratulations. Even Megan was more polite. During cheer practice, she didn't roll her eyes or whisper behind Tiana's back. Instead, she focused on the routine and even offered tips to the newer girls. One afternoon, when practice ended, Megan called out, Tiana. Wait a sec. Tiana turned, unsure what to expect. Megan hesitated, then said, I owe you an apology. For everything. I was jealous. And I took it out on you. That wasn't fair, Tiana blinked, surprised. You don't have to. I do, Megan said quickly. You worked harder than any of us. You earned your spot. I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. There was a pause. Then Tiana smiled gently. Thanks for saying that. I forgive you. For the first time, Megan's smile looked real. You're a better person than me, Tiana shook her head. We're just learning in different ways. They both laughed softly, the tension between them finally breaking for good. Later that day, Lena walked up to Tiana as they left the gym. I never thought I'd see Megan apologize to anyone, she said, grinning. Tiana chuckled. Neither did I, but maybe people can change. You think she'll stay that way? Tiana looked up at the setting sun. I hope so. I think we all can if we try. That weekend, her father got a call from the school. They wanted him to speak at the next assembly for Veterans Appreciation Day. When he told Tiana, she froze mid-bite at breakfast. You're really going to speak at my school? He smiled. They asked. I said yes. Why? You embarrassed of your old man? She laughed. No, just, it's going to be weird seeing everyone's faces when they find out you're not just some regular dad. He winked. Good. Maybe it'll remind them that discipline and kindness can go hand in hand. The day of the assembly arrived and the entire school gathered in the gym. The principal introduced her father, and as he walked up to the microphone, the room went quiet. He started simply. Most of you know me now as Tiana's father, and that's something I'm more proud of than any title I've ever had. A few people smiled. Some clapped. He went on, speaking not about war or medals, but about character, respect, and courage. He told stories about teamwork, about standing up for others, and about learning to see strength in different forms. At one point he said, courage isn't just found on a battlefield. Sometimes it's in a young girl walking into a room full of people who doubt her and choosing to smile anyway. Tiana's heart swelled. She blinked away tears as everyone turned to look at her. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause, and not polite applause, but the kind that comes from genuine admiration. Afterward, students lined up to shake his hand. Teachers thanked him for his words. Even Megan came forward, smiling shyly. You raised an amazing daughter, she said. He nodded kindly. She did most of the work herself. That night when they got home, Tiana hugged him tight. You didn't have to say all that about me, she said softly. He smiled. I didn't have to. I wanted to. As the months went by, life at school kept getting better. Tiana was chosen as co-captain of the cheer team for the next season. She mentored younger girls, helping them with confidence and technique. The team started volunteering at local community events, performing at fundraisers, and helping younger kids learn simple routines. Tiana made sure everyone felt welcome, no matter what they looked like or where they came from. One afternoon, as she was helping a group of little girls practice, one of them tugged at her sleeve and said, I want to be like you when I grow up. Tiana knelt down and smiled. You already are. You just have to believe it. The little girl grinned, her eyes wide. Later that evening, Tiana sat in the bleachers after everyone had gone home. The gym was quiet except for the hum of the lights above. She thought about everything that had happened. The bullying, the doubt, the pain, and how far she'd come. Her father's words came back to her again and again. They can't take what's inside you unless you hand it over. And she realized she never had. Even on her worst days, she'd kept a small flame of hope alive. That flame had grown into something stronger, something that could never be taken away. When she walked home that night, she found her father sitting on the porch again, reading a book. He looked up as she approached. How was practice? She smiled. Good. The girls are improving fast. He nodded approvingly. I'm proud of you, you know that? I think I finally believe it, she said. He chuckled. Took you long enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in gold and pink. Then she said quietly, I used to wish people would stop judging me, but now I just hope they learned something from what happened. He nodded. They already have. You showed them how to rise without hate. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I learned that from you, he smiled softly. Then I did something right. Weeks later, the school published an article on their website titled Rising Above, the story of Jefferson High's cheer team and their journey to nationals. There was a photo of the whole team holding their trophy, smiling brightly, and right in the center stood Tiana, her arms around her teammates, the same girls who once doubted her, now her closest friends under the photo. The quote read, Strength isn't about how loud you are. It's about how much light you bring when things get dark. It was her quote. Coach had chosen it to end the article. When Tiana saw it, she felt her chest tighten with emotion. That one sentence summed up everything she'd learned. From the first cruel whispers to the cheers of victory, she had found her strength not by fighting hate, but by refusing to let it change her heart. Her father often said that life wasn't about avoiding storms, and it was about learning to stand in the rain without losing your footing. And that's exactly what she'd done months later. When the next cheer season began, a new girl joined the team. She was quiet, nervous, and a little unsure of herself, just like Tiana had been. When practice ended that day, Tiana walked over to her and smiled. You did great today. Don't worry, it gets easier. The girl looked up, relief in her eyes. Thanks, I was scared I'd mess everything up. Tiana chuckled softly. Everyone feels that way at first. Just remember, no one gets to decide who belongs here but you. The girl nodded, smiling shyly. As Tiana walked out of the gym, she saw her father waiting by the car. He waved and she waved back, her heart full. She realized then that life had come full circle. She had gone from being the new girl trying to prove herself to someone who helped others find their own strength. And through it all, her father had been her anchor, quiet, steady, and proud. She smiled to herself as she got in the car. You know, she said softly, I think I finally understand what you meant about strength. He looked at her with a knowing smile. Yeah, and what's that? She turned to look out the window, the evening light reflecting in her eyes. It's not about being tough. It's about being true to who you are. He nodded. That's my girl. As they drove away, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. And for the first time in a long time, Tiana felt completely at peace, knowing that she had turned her pain into purpose, her fear into fire, and her story into strength. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's living so fully, so kindly, and so bravely that the people who once doubted you can't help but see your light. The new school year started with a different kind of energy. The hallways that once felt heavy with whispers now buzzed with laughter and excitement. People seemed lighter, friendlier. And for Tiana, it felt like stepping into a brand new chapter of her life. She walked down the hallway wearing her new cheer jacket, the words, co-captain, stitched neatly on the sleeve. It wasn't just a title, it was proof of how far she had come. As she passed by a group of students, one of them smiled and said, Hey, congrats, Tiana. You totally deserve that spot. She smiled back, still not quite used to hearing kindness from the same people who once looked down on her. When she reached her locker, she found a note taped to it. In neat handwriting it read, Thank you for making this team a family again. There was no name, but she didn't need one. The message was enough. That afternoon, cheer practice began like always, but something about it felt different. The team worked harder, laughed louder, and cheered stronger. Even the newer girls were catching on quickly, their nerves fading with each routine. Coach clapped her hands and said, All right, ladies, this season isn't just about winning. It's about showing what real teamwork looks like, and that starts with you two. She pointed at Tiana and Megan. The two exchanged a smile, something that still felt new but genuine. As the team stretched and got into position, Coach whispered to Tiana, You've become the heart of this team. Don't ever forget that. Those words stayed with her long after practice ended. Later that week, the principal asked Tiana to speak at the school's Community Day event, something she'd never done before. The idea of standing in front of hundreds of students made her stomach twist, but she couldn't say no. When she told her father that evening, he grinned. "I'll be there front row like always." She rolled her eyes playfully. "You don't have to come to everything, you know." He laughed. "I missed enough time when you were little because of work. I'm not missing anything now." The day of the event arrived faster than she expected. The gym was filled with students, teachers, and parents. The smell of popcorn and the sound of chatter filled the air. When her name was called, she took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. For a moment, she just stood there, her heart pounding in her ears. Then she spotted her father near the back, giving her a small nod. The same calm, reassuring look he'd always given her before big moments. She smiled and began to speak. "When I first joined this school, I wanted to fit in so badly that I forgot how to stand out. I thought maybe if I tried hard enough, people would accept me. But life doesn't work like that." The room was quiet now. "I learned that you can't wait for people to see your worth. You have to know it yourself. And once you do, no one can take it away." She looked across the room at her teammates, at her friends, at the teachers who had supported her. "I used to think being strong meant fighting back, but I learned that sometimes strength means staying kind when others aren't. It means not letting the world harden your heart." There were nods in the crowd. Even some of the teachers looked emotional. Tiana smiled softly. "And I learned that when you have people who believe in you, even just one person, it changes everything." She paused and looked toward her father. "For me, that person was my dad." The audience turned toward him and he gave a proud nod, his eyes shining. When she finished her speech, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't just polite. It was real, full of warmth and respect. Afterward, people came up to her, thanking her for her words. Some students told her she had inspired them to keep going when things felt hard. By the time she got home that evening, she was exhausted but happy. She dropped her bag on the couch and smiled. "I think I survived my first big speech." Her father looked up from his coffee. "You didn't just survive it. You crushed it," she laughed. "You always say that." "Because it's always true," he said with a wink. The next few months flew by. The cheer team continued to grow stronger, and their reputation spread beyond their school. They were invited to perform at a regional showcase, something only the best teams got to do. When the day came, the team arrived early at the large indoor arena. The crowd was massive, far bigger than anything they had seen before. Nerves rippled through the group, but Tiana stayed calm. She remembered her father's advice: when you're nervous, focus on the people who believe in you, not the ones who doubt you. As the music started, they launched into their routine, flips, jumps and chants echoing across the floor. Every move was sharp, every voice in sync. When the final cheer hit, the crowd went wild. Even the announcer's voice cracked with excitement as he said, "That's what we call a performance." Afterward, teams from other schools came up to congratulate them. A coach from a neighboring high school even told Tiana, "You've got real leadership potential. Ever think about coaching one day?" She laughed. "Maybe someday." But that thought stuck in her mind. Coaching. Helping others find their strength. Maybe that was something she could really do. That night, as they drove home, her father asked, "You ever think about what comes after high school?" She nodded. "Sometimes. I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I think I want to help people. Maybe work with kids. Maybe teach," he smiled. "Whatever it is, you'll do it well." The next day at school, the team gathered for practice. They were still buzzing from the showcase, but Coach had something else planned. She announced, "We've been invited to perform at a military family appreciation event next month. And Tiana, they specifically asked if you'd lead the opening." Tiana blinked. "Me?" Coach nodded. "Your father's story, your story, it inspired them. They want this performance to be about strength, courage, and unity, and you represent that perfectly." Her throat tightened, but she managed a small smile. "I'd be honored." When the day came, the gym was filled with veteran soldiers and their families. Banners hung from the walls and the air felt heavy with pride and emotion. Before the performance, Tiana stood backstage, her hands trembling slightly. Her father stood beside her dressed in his uniform, his medals glinting under the lights. "You ready?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I think so," he smiled. "You've faced worse," she laughed softly. "Yeah, like high school bullies," he chuckled. "Exactly." The music started and the team moved gracefully across the floor. The performance wasn't just about cheerleading. It was a story told through motion, strength, and unity. As they finished, the entire audience stood and clapped. Many were wiping their eyes. When the applause finally died down, the event organizer took the microphone and said, "Today, we were reminded that courage doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a cheer jacket." Tiana felt tears spill down her cheeks. Her father wrapped an arm around her shoulders, whispering, "That's my girl." After the event, a little boy ran up to her wearing a tiny navy shirt. "My dad's a soldier too," he said proudly. "He told me you were brave." She knelt and smiled at him. "You're brave too. Never forget that." The boy grinned and ran back to his family. That night, as she and her father drove home, the car was quiet for a long time. The stars sparkled through the windshield. Finally, she said, "Dad, do you ever miss it? The Navy?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But being home now, seeing you become who you are, that's the best mission I've ever had." She smiled softly. "You always know what to say," he chuckled. "That's because I've had practice. You've been teaching me too." The months rolled on and graduation approached. Senior year felt surreal. There were yearbook photos, final exams, and late-night talks about the future. At the senior award ceremony, Tiana sat quietly as names were called. Then the principal said, "This year's Leadership and Character Award goes to someone who has not only inspired her team, but transformed our school community. Please welcome Tiana." The crowd erupted in cheers. Her father stood up, clapping the loudest. As she walked to the stage, her heart pounded. She accepted the plaque and looked out at the faces in the audience. Her teammates, her teachers, her father. She took a deep breath and said, "I used to think fitting in was everything. But now I know it's better to stand out for the right reasons, to be kind, to be brave, and to never stop believing in yourself, even when no one else does." The applause that followed was long and warm. After the ceremony, her father hugged her tight. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she corrected him, smiling. That summer, before she left for college, they sat on the porch one last time, watching the sun dip below the trees. She said quietly, "You know, when all of that started, the bullying, the rumors, I used to wish it never happened, but now, I think I'm glad it did." He raised an eyebrow. "Glad?" "Yeah," she said softly. "Because it taught me who I am, and it showed me how strong I could be." He smiled proudly. "That's the lesson most people take a lifetime to learn." As the night grew darker, the crickets began to sing. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. In that moment, she realized something. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever felt small, unseen, or doubted. Everyone who needed to be reminded that kindness is its own kind of power. She had turned her pain into purpose, and her father had been there through it all, her quiet protector, her biggest supporter and her best teacher. The stars shimmered above them, and her father said softly, "No matter where you go, remember, you don't need to be the loudest in the room. Just the truest," she smiled. "I will." And as she looked out into the night, she felt ready for whatever came next, not because the world had become easier, but because she had become stronger.